So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us in today's webinar. I'm Christine Tobin, Manager of Customer Success. And for this session, we have our Wi-Fi engineers, Jacob Wilson and Adam Wilson, and they'll be reviewing our 4.1 new feature release. Your subscription with Wyebot includes year-round support from our team of Wi-Fi engineers and also ongoing training sessions and periodic webinars on various topics. The customer success team will keep you informed on upcoming webinars, so stay tuned. This session today will be recorded and it will be uploaded on your dashboard. Simply log into your dashboard, go to Help. Your drop-down menu is Documentation, and you'll see Wyebot's YouTube channel. During this call, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat feature by typing in your question. And your answer will be, your question will be answered by one of our Wi-Fi engineers. Thank you again for being here today, for your valuable time, and I hope you enjoy this session. And Jacob, I'll turn it over to you.
Right, excellent. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now. Just let me know if you're able to see that.
Yep, looks good.
Okay. All right, so thanks for joining, everybody. Of course, today we're going to talk about some of the new features we added in our recent software release, which came out in late June, which is version 4.1. So just FYI for everybody, all of your Wyebot sensors are already on the software version. We handle all the software updates automatically on our back end. So as long as your sensors have been online, they have received the new update. And if you have an offline sensor, you plug it in, it's gonna, as soon as it comes online, download the new software. So everybody should have access to all these features we're going to talk about today. Okay. All right. So, the first thing that we did, and this is kind of the biggest part of this software version, is we made some changes or I guess enhancements to the way we handle notifications. Primarily, right, this is around customer feedback, right? We've received some feedback that says, I don't want to get alerted every time a test fails. I prefer to have some, criteria I could set that allows me to, basically set up alerting that would trigger in the way that I prefer, right? So you can see here, we have basically what we call notification profiles now. Now, these profiles, what they allow you to do is to create basically alerting rules that would say, for example, a network test might alert you if it fails multiple consecutive times or a certain number of times within a time range, right? So, and actually, I'll kind of click through these slides and then I'll kind of log into a dashboard and show you what it looks like in real life, right? But here's a screenshot of where this is. So it's under your management tab on your dashboard. You'll see notification profiles. And what you'll want to do is add any profiles that that you're going to need. Okay. Now a notification profile, the setup is very straightforward. Now, one of the nice features around our profiles is they're actually assigned to users. So what that means is you're actually now it's possible to set up alerting rules that only trigger certain users of your dashboard, which in some cases, I think that's useful because maybe not everybody wants to get alerted for every test. So having the user function allows you to kind of, set that up based on users. And then the trigger criteria, you see the options down here. So the options are basically notifying at every transition. Now, what that means is, if a test is passing, right, and then it starts to fail, we want to send you an email alert. So that something stopped working. But then when that failing test starts to pass again, we send you another alert. So that way you're able to say, okay, well, we know whatever issue was happening is now resolved, right? So that's kind of our, I would say, default notification technique. And that's how we did it in the past, right? Before we had these profiles. Now, of course, you can also get notified every single time a test fails, right? Now, depending on the type of test, you may or may not want that level of alerting to be set up. So you have some other options. These are a little bit more interesting, right? So you can set a number of consecutive failures or a number of failures within a time range. So you can, for example, figure out if it's if something is failing once in a while, maybe not a big deal, right? But it fails 3 times in a row. Well, yeah, that's more pointing to a serious issue. And same thing with the number of failures within a certain time range. That can help you understand if there's some degraded performance going on there. And it's important to know multiple users, right? You can select for each notification profile. So you can really, you know, kind of tune this to the way that you need it to work. And then, so this is how, and I'll explain this more when I'm logging to the dashboard, right? But you need to apply the notification profiles to the network tests. So once you have the notification profile set up, you go to your network test setup page, you click on a test, and at the bottom, you'll see notification profile. There's a drop down, and this is where you select the profile that you created. And that's what will apply, you know, with notification logic to the test in question. All right, so that's the notification profile. Let's see. Yeah, with trigger criteria. So I'll talk more about this when I get onto the dashboard to look at it. Yep. Oh, one other important aspect of this notification profile is we actually now allow you to create users on the Wyebot dashboard that have basically a notification only user level. Now, why would you need that? Well, you know, if you have, for example, an email group, or, you know, some Slack channels can actually ingest email, right? For, you know, the purpose of creating tickets. You might want to add those as users to the dashboard, but obviously you don't want to go through making them an admin user or a limited user, because they have to go and, you know, set a password, all that stuff. A notification user can actually log into the dashboard. There's no way for it to log in, but what it can do is be selected as a target for your notifications, which you set up on the profile base. So that's what you'll need to do if you want to set up those notification users for the, you know, to only receive notifications and not be able to log in. You need to create them as this notification user. And yeah, so that's it for this notification profile feature. Let me go ahead and actually get into a dashboard here. Let me do it like this. Excuse me. There we go. Just to show you what this looks like again, to reiterate, right? So when you log into your dashboard, what you'll want to do, top left, click on management. All right, there's the notification profiles tab. We click here, and we see a couple of the profiles we have. Now, as a basically backwards compatibility with the previous version, if you had notifications set up already, you'll see these 2 profiles in here. Default transition profile. So that's, as we said earlier, that's the type of notification that'll alert you whenever there's a state change on the test. So from pass to fail or fail to pass, right? You'll get an alert. And then also this other one, this is called alert profile. Now this is for, there's other alerting we do on the dashboard outside of network tests, right? So AP classification alerts, if you get unauthorized access points, or some of those other alerts you set up under the advanced page, right? Those are going to alert you with this existing profile. And for the time, right, this is just going to alert as it had done before. So there's no real options to adjust criteria for these. That might change in a future release, but this is why you'll see this here. So you actually, you know, can't delete this. This is just, you know, built in as a kind of carryover from the old way things worked. All right, but just to show you here, we click add notification profile. So I can go ahead and create one here, right? You want to name it something that makes sense, because you're going to see this profile name down in the network test page. So we call it, you know, Jacob's notification profile, right? We go down here, select a user, right? And we create that profile. And now we're able to edit it, right? And I can go down here and I could adjust the rules. So we see notifying every transition, right? That's the default setting where we talked about what that does. Every failure, and then these, you know, settings here, right? We could change it. I could type in a number, so I could say, let's notify if a test fails 6 times in a row, right? I didn't spell that right, did I? Profile, and then we update that. Okay, so now this is going to follow that logic. Okay, now you see here on the right hand side, we say network test usage. So this is just how you can know if these profiles are actually currently being used. In this case, these just aren't. We don't have any notifications set up right now, but if I go to the network test tab, left-hand side here, click on this. So why don't we look at our link doctor test? I think this is always a good example. So if I click on this test profile, pops up the window. Now, obviously this, hopefully everybody's somewhat familiar with this, where you set up the test and all the options you have around this. Now at the bottom, we have this notification profile, right? Now it's set to do not notify, right? Obviously, this is not going to alert me. If I click this drop down here, now I can select my profile, right? So now my own user on this dashboard is going to be what gets an alert. And if you remember what it set it up as, it's going to alert if this test fails 6 times in a row. Okay, so that's really all there is to it. I know it's, now we're in profile world, right? So there's obviously a little bit more, slightly more complexity than there used to be with notifications. It's not just a checkbox anymore, but that's how we're going to give you those options like we discussed, setting per user notifications, setting up those different rules. So that is kind of the idea with the notification profiles. Let me check Q&A if there's any questions around that. Okay, yeah, no, it looks like no questions. I'm going to pause here for a second though, because this is one of the bigger topics we had. So for just a minute or two, I'll wait and see. Are there any questions you folks have around the notification profiles or the reworks we've done to the notification logic? So I'll just pause here, wait for the Q&A to populate if there's anything. Oh, there's one. Okay, let's see. So the alert profile, good question, actually. I'm not sure that can be renamed. Let me try something here because we can test live, right? Yes. Yeah, I believe you can. So you can rename these profiles. Yes. Yeah, the default ones can be renamed. So no worries there. So that one, I think we're good. Kevin, so I guess your question is if there's going to be okay, thank you. X hours and such. I see. So you want to, so for like the device offline notification, and when you say device offline, are you talking about the Wyebot sensor alerts if the Wyebot sensor goes down? Okay. So that's currently not what we have, the ability to set the number of hours for before that will trigger an alert, but certainly that's something we can consider for a future release. So I'll make sure that the team's aware of that as a enhancement, because I can understand, right? You might not get notified every time your sensors go down. Maybe they need to go down for a certain amount of time first. So we'll go ahead and kind of follow up with that with our engineering team. So appreciate that feedback. Ben, what you got? Let's see. So Ben, unfortunately, it's not configurable via the API at this time. But again, that's something I'll bring to the team and see if that's a potential enhancement we can make for the notification profiles. All right, got to get used to the Zoom Q&A. I'm like, how do I? There we go. Okay. All right, so we'll have another Q&A at the end of the call. So no worries if you didn't get your question, and now we can totally ask it later. But I'm going to move on to a couple other slides here, and we will keep on keeping on with this. So yeah, this will definitely be a shorter call, so you guys will probably get some time back at the end of this one here. All right, here we go, back on the slide deck. Okay, so another feature that we added, and I actually like this one quite a lot because it's very useful for us in the support team, where we can now see LLDP info from the sensor, basically showing you, if you're familiar with LLDP, right, all the stats you get from it. That's going to be things like the switch port it's plugged into, the VLAN, PoE type, all that good stuff. Very useful for troubleshooting. So now that's actually available for you on your Wyebot dashboard under the sensor config and info. So we see a screenshot of it here, but let me actually, again, back out of this, show you on the actual dashboard. So if I go to sensor config, bottom left here, I click on one of these sensors. Here's an example. We go to the info screen. And obviously, I think this is all the same up here, but now at the bottom, we have this blue button, LLDP info. So I click on this, it pops up a window. Now, this is just the, the raw, LLDP output that we're getting from the switch that we're plugged into. And every switch kind of formats LLDP a little bit differently, but it's fairly easy to eyeball it and figure out what's going on. So here we see the chassis name, D Baker's Netgear, right? So that's somebody's Netgear switch, which I'm actually surprised that the Netgear switch is giving us all this nice LLDP info, but I guess that's good to have. So you can see obviously the switch name, the management IP of the switch. So again, useful for knowing what switch is it is plugged in. Link speed, auto negotiate, if that's on or off, right? All this is very important information for troubleshooting, of course. PoE types down here. Now, what I would also add to this with this LLDP feature is if you had a sensor that is that has gone offline, right? Maybe it's a floater sensor you move around, or maybe somebody removed it and you don't know where it is, or you don't remember where it was last. The LLDP info will actually stay up for sensors that have been disconnected, which means you have the ability to see the most recent port that a sensor is plugged into. So now it's just a little bit easier to kind of track where these sensors are and locate them if you do need to recover where one was previously installed. So yeah, I mean, again, not a huge feature, but I think a very useful one. So I'm happy that we do have this added for you now. So again, that's under sensor config and info. And yeah, hopefully that's useful for you guys. If it's not useful for you, at least it's useful for me, right? In support when I'm needing to track down where sensors are located. So all right. That was a quick one, right? Question around that, I think. Oh, that's not a question. That's a comment, but we appreciate it, Jay. Yes, I do like LLDP as well. All right. Another one. This is maybe warrants some explaining. Okay, so we have this option under our SSID setup page, which I'll show you on the UI where that is, where you can actually update the SSID security. Now, why would you want to do this? It's kind of a weird situation, but basically, the way our sensor works is when it adds SSIDs, it basically is going to match the security settings exactly. We're not like a normal client where a client's going to kind of use in some sense, some wildcard fields when it connects to allow for multiple security types. We want to match that exactly because we let you do very in-depth testing that we're using the same wireless security parameters that your access points are using, right? So the reason we have this update security option now is if you, for example, you have an SSID that's WPA2 and you update it to WPA3. Well, with the way we handled security, and we still do handle it this way, is you would have previously had to go and actually either delete and recreate that SSID or manually adjust the security parameters on it, which wasn't really obvious to end users that was something you had to do. So we have this update security option in here now. So if you do make some changes to a network, you don't need to go through all that. All you have to do, and again, I'm going to zip out of this. Oops, escape. There we go. And we go to our My SSIDs. This is where this feature is available. So if I use our checkboxes here, if you remember, we have this action menu, which is that was added in the previous software release now. But I could click on one of our SSIDs, go down here, select update security, right? If I apply that, basically it's just going to rediscover the security settings that SSID uses. And you don't need to go and delete and recreate the SSID. So just to explain more about what security settings are, if I click on this SSID profile, under advanced here, actually this is a better example. So under advanced, we see all these different AKMs and pairwise ciphers and group ciphers and PMFs. So this is kind of, advanced Wi-Fi security stuff, but you can see here, there's a ton of different options, right? If you're doing standard, EAP, for your enterprise network, or you're doing fast transition EAP, right? That's a big difference. So we need to match that. Pairwise cipher, group cipher. So all these different things. If you make any settings on your wireless controller, you'll just need to go and use this update security option I just showed you to make sure that the sensor is still using the, the correct security settings for that SSID. so that's why we have this, right? So kind of basically a requirement just for the way that Wyebot handles security, which is unique as we are a testing type of device, right? So that's the update security, and I think we're just about through what we have here. A couple things though, we actually, now this is another feature request we've gotten a couple times, where we actually report now on the external IP address that the sensor was using for a network test. So just to remind everybody, right, the sensors have this network test functionality where they can connect as a network client through the wired or the Wi-Fi and do a whole variety of things. But any tests that go out to the internet, of course, are going to be going out via the public IP that you're using, right? Your internet connection now. For those of you with SD-WAN or WAN load balancing or MPLS or whatever else, right? There's lots of fancy WAN architectures out there that might use multiple public IPs. And I think it's important to know in those cases, which public IP was being used for a test. So if you had a degraded speed test, right? You want to know what IP, what internet circuit it used. So that's actually reported for you on the network test results under the DHCP section. So again, just for the sake of clarity, I'm going to log into our dashboard again and look at that. So if I go to one of my sensors, like this conference room one here, we can see all of our different network tests that have been running. So we can click on really any of these. If I look at our office test, click on this one here. So the public IP info, we actually just put it as a field underneath the DHCP column. So that's where it is. I know that it's not really part of DHCP technically, but I think that's just where it made sense to have it on the UI. So you can see here, this public IP address is listed, right? So again, just some help for those of you with multiple internet circuits. You want to know which one was being used. Well, now you can see that with this public IP field. All right. So that is the public IP feature. And I think we have one more slide. Yes. So again, just some updates to the API we made. Now, I won't go through these line by line, I would say, but basically we've been updating fields as time goes on to make sure that everything's consistent, right? Making sure that our output is normally going to be an integer number instead of something with units on it. So that way it's easier to ingest for software developers. And we also update our captive portal support with every release. So, all these different vendors have different portals these days. So we added portals, I believe, for Aruba, Cisco, ICE, Extreme, as well as Mist, right? So we have some captive portal support for those vendors, and we will continue to add more vendors as time goes on. So, remember to email support if you need us to look at a specific captive portal vendor and see if it's a potential addition that we can make. Another question here. Yeah, Eric, we did record this. So I believe we'll upload this to YouTube. So you'll be able to go back and watch it. All right. So, those are the features we added. Again, like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter session. We're not going to fill the whole hour unless you guys have a ton of questions for the next 35 minutes. But I will kind of pause here. And Adam, do you want to run it for the Q&A portion here?
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
All right.